Welcome to Life-Changing Challengers, the podcast where passion meets purpose. I'm Brad Minus, your host, guiding you through stories of transformation and triumph, from endurance feats to overcoming adversity. Our guests defy the limits and inspire action. Ready to ignite your desire and incinerate your barriers? Join us. Your journey to the extraordinary begins now. And welcome back to another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. Hey, everybody. We have got someone special for you today. This is Conor Cunneen, and he is a motivational keynote speaker. He basically looks at performance, but he uses a lot of humor with it. So get ready to laugh. We're going to have a good time with this one. He's a humorist as well. So this is going to be fun. So, Conor, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. You're putting pressure on me already, Brad.
Pressure? No pressure. No pressure. This is just you and me. Hey, Conor, can you give us a little bit of information on your childhood? What was the complement of your family? Where did you grow up? What was the location like? And what was it like to be Conor as a kid?
I grew up in a small little town in County Cork. Cork is on the south coast of Ireland. The town I grew up in is Middleton, which is where Irish distillers distill their wonderful brand of Middleton Irish whiskey, Redbreast whiskey, Paddy, Jameson, etc. My dad was the doctor in that town, and in those days, the distillery would not have had its own medical staff or anything like that. So my dad was the local doctor for the distillery, and I remember him a few times getting a phone call and saying, "Doc, you got to come down to the distillery." So that was Middleton. I also do remember, actually, in those days, Middleton and the distillery were on its last legs. This was at a time when Irish whiskey had a poor brand image and there wasn't a lot of distilling being done there. But when we were very young, me and a couple of friends would be running around the distillery, just getting underneath the security gate, and an aged security guard would be chasing after us and using words like, "Come back here, you little effer, you Cunneen. I tell your dad on you," kind of thing. So that was growing up in the Middleton County, the Cork. 3 brothers, 1 sister. And when I left there at 18, I just went to Cork University College, Cork, and then discovered the big bad world. I had a good fun time when I was growing up. My goal, I tell people, you can achieve anything you want to. Now, the problem with that is that I wanted to be a goalkeeper for Manchester United. I never achieved that. So I maybe oversell the fact that you can achieve anything you want. I don't actually believe that, but I do believe it's important to have goals, which we'll probably speak about later on.
So obviously you grew up playing football, or we call it soccer here.
Yeah, we actually call it soccer in Ireland as well, Brad, because the two main Irish Gaelic games are hurling, which is kind of a cross between lacrosse and field hockey, and Gaelic football, which is kind of a cross between Australian rules football and rugby. So the main football in Ireland actually is Gaelic football, 15 players on each team. So the other football game in Ireland is known as soccer. So in countries where there's more than one football code, I think that's when the word soccer takes precedence then.
I have learned so much from being able to interview people from Europe and from Australia, because I didn't know any of this. I didn't know there were so many different versions of football. And that Gaelic football, actually, you know what? I saw a small indie Christmas movie that came out this past year that had Gaelic football in it.
Right. Yeah. Was Colin Meaney the Irish actress?
Yes.
Yeah. I saw that a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So it was nice to see this Gaelic football, and it's just completely different. But I mean, there's so many things that I didn't know. I didn't know that England actually likes NFL type football. Like they've actually got teams of American football. So you guys got American football and Gaelic football, Australian football. I mean, it's run rampant. And I didn't know about all these different sports. Like, what was the other sport that you mentioned? Where you
other sport, I'll spell this because my Irish accent might throw the people off, but it's called hurling, Hurling. And I would encourage anyone to get onto YouTube and just do a search for hurling Ireland. It is apparently the fastest field sport in the world. You got 15 guys with hurleys, they're called, which is kind of a bit like a cross between a baseball bat and a lacrosse bat, or whatever the phrase for the lacrosse is. And they're playing 15 to a team. And the amazing thing, Brad, is that it's an amateur sport, at least, that they don't get paid for playing the game. But each county would have a team, and in August and September, both hurling and football, that's what's called the All-Ireland Final, which is the Super Bowl of hurling and football. And in those games, there would be about maybe 78 to 80,000 people attending the Super Bowl of hurling or football. That's known as the All-Ireland Final.
Is hurling played in any other country?
It isn't. Kind of quite amazing, because when you look at all the stuff that's on ESPN, and they've got sports for every single pass, flies climbing up a wall, kind of gets on ESPN. I think the Irish hurling authorities have done a desperately poor job in promoting the product, because it's an incredibly exciting and action-packed game.
Well, I am definitely going to check that out, because that sounds amazing. I had never thought that actually the most watched sport, the biggest spectator sport in the world, is actually cricket.
I could probably believe it because of India and Pakistan, the size of their populations there. I didn't actually realize that that was the most watched sport, but that's a sport now that they play a little bit of it in Ireland, but it's not. Obviously, Ireland has got a pretty good international team, but that's a pretty slow-moving sport. But when we talk about crazy sports, I was just flicking on ESPN the other night. My wife was, and she just said, "Did you see this? Pillow fighting."
Okay,
pillow fighting on ESPN.
It's got to be a joke.
There was welterweight guys, I swear to God, in a ring, pillow fighting.
That just sounds crazy. What I did think was kind of interesting was, well, you're in Chicago, like cornhole. You throw the beanbag in there. I had no clue that there was a professional cornhole league.
Yeah.
And axe throwing.
Yep.
The reason why it became so big is because there's actually an axe throwing league. So the ones that you go to the bars, and there's the hatchet throwing, and they show you so there's a hatchet throwing, and that's actually what that is. They call it axe throwing at the bars and all those clubs, but it's actually hatchet. And then they have axe throwing, which is a big two-handed axe, and they throw it.
Yeah.
All this stuff people are getting money for, professional, and people are going and watching it. And I was like, I had no clue. I felt like I was in a bubble.
Yeah.
I never really...
The sport that has taken off big time, particularly in Europe and the UK, was darts, which I know we play here as well. But there's a 16-year-old kid, I can't remember his name now, that won the World Championship. He might be 17 years of age now that he's won the World Championship, but he's taken the game by storm in the last 15, 18 months. So everyone is watching him. And darts now has just become a huge sport, and kids of 7 and 8 are playing it and going in darts leagues, etc. So it shows, I think, the importance of having an icon in any sport. And if you can get someone that really is good and kind of grabs people's attention, it builds sport. I mean, Michael Jordan is probably the best example of that. He exploded the NBA.
Yeah, exploded the NBA and still being talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Still being compared to, still being talked about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure 3, 4, 5-year-old kids should be running around with darts with a pointy edge. I'm not sure that sounds like a great idea.
Maybe not.
But anyway, so you said you went to Cork University.
Yeah.
Or is it the University of Cork? Or?
University College Cork is known as UCC. So I did a commerce degree. They are just basically a business degree. Didn't really have any idea what I wanted to do. And when I left college, I met my darling wife in college. That was the best thing that happened. When I left college, the only time I ever moved positions for money was when I left college. I was kind of going to go down the accounting route, which is the normal route for people coming out of business. But Murphy's Irish Stout, which is a competitor of Guinness, were looking for brand managers. And a friend of mine said to me, he said, Conor, Murphy's are looking for brand managers. I'm going to apply for it. And they had 3 positions. And I said to Greg, I still remember this now. I pitch myself now as being a marketing, having a good knowledge of marketing at least. Right. I said to Greg, what's a brand manager? I swear to God. But that course did not include marketing at all in those days. But I got into Murphy's because they offered me more money than the accounting firm that had offered me a position. And I just fell in love with the overall marketing idea and the I fell in love with Murphy Stout for a long time, but you can't get that in the States. So no, I'm a Guinness aficionado, or I like Guinness anyway. I spent a couple of years there. What brought me to the States, if I can jump that far ahead, I don't know whether you want me to jump that far ahead at the moment or not.
You got some great stories that happened in between there?
There's probably quite a good few stories. I tell people that I actually launched the Heineken brand in Ireland, Brad. Pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
Now, if you probe a little bit deeper and you ask me, what did I do? At that time, Murphy's were launching the Heineken brand. Heineken actually bought Murphy's eventually. But so the Heineken brand was being launched. So what I did as an assistant brand manager, I used to go around to the pubs and put up the point of sale. I launched the Heineken brand.
Yeah, hey, aim to fame. Long as Heineken. I take it. Exactly, show them that it was drinkable. Yeah. So I imagine you got quite a few Heinekens in you in that point. It's just to show them. But I've tried Murphy's once. I can't remember where it was. I think it was in Canada. Somebody had just brought it or something. It was very good. I love Guinness. I search for it. And whenever it's on tap, I can't resist. Someone tells me that they're going to bring me the can. I'm like, well, let's see what else you got. But when they tell me it's on draft, I'm all over Guinness.
Yeah. Well, and one of my challenges now, and quite a few Irish people have this issue, is it's difficult to get a well-poured pint of Guinness in the United States. And in fact, the one day of the year I absolutely will not drink Guinness is on Patrick's Day, because they pour rubbish that day. Guinness requires a 2-pour fill, needs to be put down and allowed to settle. So those little, as I said, nitrogen orphan bubbles find their way to some Guinness Wonderland, which is a white creamy head. And then once they've all settled there, the barman will take the pint glass, top it up, and hand it with love and care and attention to the drooling patron. I mean, that's what should happen. And that happens in Ireland, where it doesn't happen that often here in the United States.
The Great Guinness Toast. I don't know if they're still doing it. I used to attend every year, and most of the time, that's exactly what it was. The complete Americans that knew nothing about Guinness and was there for the first time, they would all complain they weren't getting their drinks on time. They said it was slow. But what they didn't realize was that they would sit there and they'd pour, let it settle, and then finish it. And then there's a place here in Florida, Ybor City, and they would do the 2-pour, but then they would put some sort of design on the top, aside the head. That was, they do something. Either they would put like the branding of the bar or the Guinness logo or something. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing brand. And actually is another brand, I think, that has revitalized pretty dramatically in the last 10, 12 years as well. I think it was in Ireland in particular, when I was growing up, it was seen as an old person's drink. Now it's the most popular drink, as I understand it, amongst the Gen Z age group again. So you can rebrand if you put the right kind of efforts into it. Jameson is one of the fastest growing whiskies in the world. The Irish whiskey is one of the fastest growing sections in the whole world at this stage. And 25 years ago, people would have said, nah, not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. No. Out here, several of the big radio stations out here, there was one year where they all went to Ireland.
Yeah.
And they all got the tour of the Jameson factory.
Yeah.
And they would put them up, and they of course they went to the pubs and the whole bit, and they talked about Guinness as well. But then they all talked about having this great tour of the Jameson factory, walking out with bottles of Jameson and stuff. And I think there's one, where is it? But there's a Jameson restaurant, Wilmette. I think it's in Wilmette.
There is, and I know the one you're talking about, all right. I'm having a blank on where it actually was.
Right. But but there was, I don't think it was owned by Jameson.
No.
But I think they got the licensing right, because the font and the logo was the Jameson, was actually the Jameson whiskey logo. And yes, I got a Jameson while I was there, because I felt like it would have been sacrilegious if I didn't. So I think there's we have a lot of Irish culture. I don't know. In lack of a better term, I'd say a lot of Irish appropriation. Out there.
That's probably true. But then again, like, depending which authority you look at, either between 30 and 40 million people living in the United States have got some Irish heritage or Irish blood in them. So it's a huge part of the US culture, obviously. And because now we're kind of in a total global world. I mean, American culture has come into Ireland, Irish culture has come into the UK, Australia, and the United States, etc. So it's a never-ending change, I think.
Okay, so just to get some of these questions answered, and I'm sure that I'm only going to ask them because I don't know, and I'm thinking that some of the people will ask you as well. And then we're going to get back to your story. First of all, kilts. Are they both Irish and Scottish, or are they basically Scottish?
Any Irishman who claims that,
Great.
No, it's really a Scottish thing. Years and years ago, before trousers, pants were invented, but kilt is primarily a Scottish thing.
Okay. And that basically says the same thing for bagpipes?
The main pipe in Ireland, or the most traditional Irish pipe, is what's called the uilleann pipe, Uilleann. And the way that is played is that they get the music by squeezing the bag underneath the arm. Bagpipes are very much associated with Scotland, but most of the Irish large bands here use bagpipes as well. So the uilleann pipe is the more traditional one. And if you ever want to see really good musicians playing the uilleann pipe, you might be familiar with the Chieftains. They were an Irish folk music band, and they used to have a couple of very good uilleann pipe players of Chieftains. If someone wants to go onto YouTube after checking hurling, they can go to the Chieftains.
Yeah, no, the Chieftains are great. No, it's great. But there's a lot of string instruments though that are associated with Ireland, right?
The harp is the main one, and that's really the only one I think will really be associated with Ireland. And the harp, actually, Brad, is the Irish national icon. So on all of the government livery and stationery, the harp appears. And the interesting thing is, green is not the national colour of Ireland. It's actually blue. Now, don't ask me why. I'm not sure. I suppose I should check it sometime. But the official government colour is blue.
Wow.
Yeah.
There is something that we all need to learn because, of course, St. Patrick's Day, we're, in the whole bit and people wear green thinking, and then people are like, oh, well, you're not Irish, so you shouldn't wear green. And I'm like, this has become a national holiday. And I think that it celebrates Ireland. And again, like you said, we've all got a little piece of Ireland in us somewhere. But yeah, that's great. All right. So we've taken care of some of those questions that I know a lot of people have, but are afraid to ask a real Irishman. So this is good. We're moving on here. So you're with Murphy's and then you came to the United States. What was the idea behind it? Did Murphy's actually send you here?
Well, no, I left Murphy's after a couple of years and had a couple of different corporate moves. And eventually I ended up with a company called Best Foods, who were taken over by Unilever. You'd be familiar with the brands I was responsible for were primarily Hellmann's mayonnaise and Knorr soups and sauces in the European market, Ireland. They transferred me over to look after the UK business for a couple of years. And then I was asked to go to the United States. And I remember a friend of mine in Ireland who actually worked with a competitor. He said, Conor, I hear you're going over to the States to mess that place up now, are you?
Yeah.
Well, he actually used a different 4-letter word compared, but we won't get it.
Get it. That's amazing. All right. You went to the UK first.
Yeah, I was working in the UK for 2 years. So what happened, Brad, was that I had done a pretty good job with the Irish business, food service business that we were working on. And they said, let's bring the Irish guy over to the UK as well. So I was actually working on the Irish business and on the UK business. And what just happened there was that I'd fly out on Monday morning and fly back to Dublin on either Thursday or Friday. But the challenge I had, though, was that I'd leave Dublin on Monday morning, come into the UK, and I'm pretty enthusiastic and lively guy. So when we'd have meetings on Monday morning, for instance, after I arrive in the UK, after a while I realised that they haven't got a clue what I'm saying. I'm speaking far too fast. So I'd slow down and keep slowing down then for the rest of the week. I'll go back to Ireland maybe on Thursday night. I go into the meetings on Friday and I'm speaking slow by Irish standards. And my friends are thinking, this guy's had a stroke or something like that. So it was really, but I really enjoyed working with my buddies in the UK. We're there almost for 2 years. We were actually planning to land permanently in the UK, but I was able to turn the UK business around. And then they said, do you want to come over to the US? So I came over to the US and I've been working on my Chicago accent now, Brad, for about 25 years. Nearly.
So what would you say the difference as far as the culture goes between Ireland and the UK? Besides, they speak a lot slower.
They speak a lot slower. The differences would have been, I think, they were a bit more proper, kind of in the way they look after themselves and spoke, etc., in the business environment. I mean, I was advised that they suggested to me, Conor, you're using a lot of bombs. So we pulled back a little bit on that. But the group I was working with, though, I couldn't say there's much differences because I was really only doing business there and really kind of come back to Ireland to live at the weekends, etc. All I got to say is that 25 plus years on, I still have got some good friends from the UK, and I have really fond memories of the whole place.
Were you basically in London?
A place called Esher, which is southwest of London, near Heathrow Airport. It's kind of one of the fancier places. No, I wasn't staying in a fancy place, but one of the fancier places where a lot of the soccer stars have their training facilities. Chelsea has got a training facility there. A lot of the soccer stars live around that area as well. Too warm and humid. But London in the fall, or the autumn as we will call it, I think it's just a beautiful city.
Excellent. Yeah. And the only reason I ask is because I'm actually heading to London next month.
Right.
I'm heading there for some business that I got to do at our office there.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to it because I've never been. So I just the idea of what you thought between that, because then my next question obviously is now Europe coming over to the United States. You have some sort of culture shock, and what might have stirred that?
Yeah, probably the culture shock. For me was not too bad because I come over here. And I'm after being the first culture shock was we arrive at Christmas time, and I drag my 14-year-old darling daughter out of high school in Ireland and dump her into a freshman class in Lyle at 14 years of age. I mean, it was just in the middle of freshman year, Christmas time. That was kind of cruelty, but she was being brilliant about it. I remember when she got married a few years back, I said to her at the wedding, I never remember you once giving me, I used the word shit for when I had ruined your life kind of thing. The positive is that she met her husband at the school as well. So there was positives there. But the first major challenge, Brad, was we arrive when Christmas time, 3 or 4 days before Christmas. My wife wanted to get out of Ireland before Christmas because she thought it'd be too maudlin if we were there at Christmas. But 6 days after we arrived, Chicago has its worst snowstorm since 1967.
Jeez.
So snow in Ireland, that's a major snowstorm in Ireland. Never seen a snowblower in my life. We arrive into Chicago. We can't get access to our house. All of our belongings were stuck in transit because they couldn't get them out. One of the many interesting little things that happened is we brought over some wines and other bits and pieces, which I think technically you're not supposed to do. But I would put them into packaging and large transport or transit cube. And because it was freezing, the wines kind of pushed the corks out. So a lot of the clothing was damaged by red wine.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
That would have been 98, the winter of Christmas 98 to 99 is what it was. But my wife still is with me. So as I say, if we survive that, we'll survive anything.
I dragged mine around too, so I get that. But in 1979, I was there, and we had what we called the Blizzard of 79.
Yeah.
And literally, so I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
And the snowdrifts were taller than me. My dad's 6 feet tall. The snowdrifts were taller than him.
Yeah.
But it was a blast. We had a great time because the sledding, the skiing, all of that was like unparalleled. We had these drifts were so big that we would literally build giant forts. We'd have to tunnel through to get to each other's houses. Yeah, our snowblowers and our shovels never got more exercise because it was a constant thing.
Yeah. Well, no, the change is I actually said this to someone the other day when I was on the phone to them in Ireland. I've used a snowblower once this winter. That's a total change, like for Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. I swear, only once.
Oh, wait, but it's been cold. You guys...
It's been cold. It's been cold, all right, when there was another snowstorm. But it's totally changed what's happened in the last few years in terms of the amount of snow that we're getting.
Yeah, my last question was, and you just answered it, was do you still get back to Ireland once in a while?
Yeah, I try to get back at least once a year. We're going to be back twice this year for weddings and things like that. And anytime I'm in danger of losing the Irish brogue and I desperately need a good pint of Guinness, I go back to Ireland.
Oh, okay. So wait, there's another thing, that myth. I don't know if it's a myth or if it's the truth. You can tell us, but we understand that Guinness here doesn't taste the same as it does in Ireland. And then the alcohol content is a little bit higher in Ireland. Is that true?
I'll take the alcohol content first. My understanding is the alcohol content is 4.2% here and in Ireland. And the reason why it doesn't taste as good here as it does in Ireland is because you're not in Ireland. If we can actually follow that logic. Because when we used to we're living in Ireland, we go to France pretty often for vacation. And you'd be buying $3 bottles of wine, red wine, and it was magic. So you buy a case of it, bring it back to Ireland, and then we're drinking the $3 bottle of wine in our back garden, and it's rubbish. It tastes awful. But my belief is that so much of your perception is based on your environment and experiences, and I think Guinness here, if it's poured well, it tastes good. But the challenge is a lot of the time it's not poured well, and it's just something that I think Guinness could be more active on here in the US. That's my perception, but it's easy for one person to talk about a corporate brand.
Yeah, no, but that's good to know, because all of us, we're under this myth that, it tastes different, it's supposed to be better and blah, blah, blah. But I get what you're saying. And I'm right there with you. So, Portillo's.
Yeah.
Portillo's is a Chicago mainstay. I mean, if you want a good beef sandwich, there's Portillo's. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of mom and pop shops out there that are much better than Portillo's.
Yeah.
But if you know that you want a decent beef sandwich, you can go to Portillo's and you can get one. We've got two here in Tampa, and it isn't the same. It's what the excuse is the water.
Yeah. I'll tell you an interesting one. When I was in Orlando about 2 years ago, we were driving near Universal Studios somewhere. There was a backup a mile long that didn't make any sense to me. I took to the outside lane. I was able to avoid the backup because people were obviously in a line for something. You know what they were in the line for? It was the opening of the first White Castle in Orlando, in Florida.
Yes.
And people were lying for 24 hours for this magic.
Another Chicago mainstay, and another Chicago chain that was built there, bred there, and made popular there. And here it is coming into Florida, and people are lined up out the door to get to it. That Portillo's I was telling you about, during lunch, you can't get in. You have to plan. You either got to be there at 11 o'clock or know that you're not going to eat till 2.
Right. Yeah.
So, but that's Chicago. All right. So let's run back here real quick. And so you get back here to Chicago, and you brought your whole family. Everybody's running. Unfortunately, you're stuck in a snowstorm when you get here, and you start to lay out. And then you were working. And who were you working for when you got here?
I was okay. We called me Unilever because they took over the Unilever. Right. So I was the VP of marketing for their food service business, and we were responsible for selling product and services into restaurants, hotels, hospitality institutions, that kind of thing. So it was a pretty good business, and I really enjoyed it because my boss, when I came over first, he was an Italian American with the wonderful name of Mike Bevilacqua out in New York. He made Robert De Niro sound like a choir boy. So being an F-bomb dropping Irish guy myself, I felt really at home with this kind of a guy. It was interesting, though, that a couple of years after we were taken over by Unilever, I wasn't a good cultural fit for them because Unilever is a great organization, but a bit more straight-laced than what we were, especially with our boss, Mike Bevilacqua. And after a period of time, we just separated. They wanted me to go back to Europe. For family reasons, I told them to get stuffed. They told me get stuffed, so we had a mutual stuffing. But I understand that one person cannot determine an HR policy for an organization. So left them, and I started doing some consulting initially on the food service area, was being asked to speak at conferences, was being asked to come back and speak at conferences. And at the time I left, I went to an outplacement company for a couple of months where they were kind of giving you advice now to your resume and what your future was, etc. I decided I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to do my own thing. But what I did do when I was at the outplacement company was I saw what job search and unemployment, which I use very, very carefully to spend a few minutes' time, does to people's psyche. And I said to the outplacement company, I'll do a lunch and learn someday on staying sane and productive in job search. I did that thinking it was going to be a once-off. They said, Conor, will you do it again next week and the week after? And since then, I've done a lot of work with people in job search. It's not an income stream of mine. I've written a book on the topic, which is this one here, another staying sane, motivated and productive in job search. And that really allowed me to hone my motivational messages and made me realize that, hey, I've got some kind of content that does help people, whether they're in job search or whether they're in job. So after a little while, I morphed into Irishman Speaks. And today the brand is Irishman Speaks. And the mission is to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. Improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile.
I love that. That's exactly what we're here. This is exactly what Life-Changing Challenges is. It's, I usually speak on people that have a major adversity in their life somewhere down the line, an obstacle, a disease, tragedy in their life, something, and then how they've overcome it with doing stuff that are unorthodox. Obviously your whole life's been unorthodox, so this makes it a lot easier, especially since you said you went to business and then all of a sudden you found yourself marketing and then where you bounced around. I think that's fantastic. It makes for great stories, but that's what we need. And especially in jobs right now where people feel stuck. Not everybody is made for making their own business. Not everybody's about being an entrepreneur, which is what goes crazy all over the internet today, right?
Yeah.
Everything is, be your own boss, you become entrepreneur, but not everybody is made for that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you got to have the entrepreneurial spirit. You got to find the right idea, and then you got to be able to survive for a couple of years. Because quite honestly, job satisfaction couldn't get anything better. But revenue stream can be all over the place. I mean, COVID, the week when the country closed down, I got about 18 phone calls from event planners saying, Conor, we're cancelling. We're not doing it. We'll have to rebook you some other time. 2009, 10, 11 kind of thing when the other depression happened. Boy, that was pretty difficult as well. So you've got to have mental resilience. I think in my business as well, you need a physical resilience, but you also have to have some financial resilience so that when things are a little bit difficult, you can keep on keeping on.
I get that, and I went through the same exact thing. So, that I'm an endurance coach. At the time, I had a roster of like 32 people. It was only because I had taken on that many people because I worked on contract as an IT contractor. And right around COVID, I had just signed a new contract and they took it from me. And so I just started picking up more people. And then all of a sudden they were like, well, we really can't meet. So I can't go to the gym. But I'm like, that's the greatest thing about endurance sports is everything's done outside. But the pools were limited. People were just scared. And then of course people were losing income. So of course they weren't the first thing that's going to go is their endurance coach, right?
Absolutely. Same with it bringing in the speakers and things like that. The positive of the COVID though, for someone like me, it did actually allow me to develop, I think, good skill set on webinars and Zoom, etc. So I now can do training and speaking via Zoom or Teams to organizations. I was doing a little bit of it, but this has opened up totally new avenues for me.
Okay, so let's talk about your advice on job performance and people that are feeling stuck in their jobs, which is what I think is going on right now and has been going on for a while. It's not the fact that there's not jobs out there. We're at a 4.1 unemployment rate. And if you look at all the job boards, there's a plethora of jobs out there. But the people that are already in their jobs and they feel like, well, I have to take this job because I need money. What are some of the tricks, trades, techniques that you talk about to help people either move on or stay in their job and get more fulfilled?
Right. I've been in that once or twice or had bosses that were like something out of a horror movie or something like that. But here's where I start with organizations, Brad, is that I say that most leaders cannot improve their employees' net worth. But almost all leaders can improve employees' self-worth. Okay? So, I mean, unless you're Elon Musk, you're not going to be able to improve your employees' net worth anyway significantly. But every single one who's watching or listening to this can improve their colleagues' self-worth. And if you do that, you're going to be more productive. And what I try to do is I provide some good concepts which we can speak about as to how anyone can improve their employees, their colleagues, their subordinates' self-worth so that they can improve their productivity and performance and do it with a smile as well.
Excellent. You want to go into some of the techniques?
Yeah. The core keynote I do is based around the gift of GAB. And GAB, Brad, is an acronym for goals, attitude, and behavior. Goals, attitude, and behavior.
I like
the idea here is that if you can adapt the concepts we're going to speak about, you will be able to create a different work environment. But you got to be intentional about doing it. I think people will say to me, Conor, that's really good content. I love it. And I say, all right, you've got good content. You've got good ideas now. It's up to you. And you got to be intentional about doing this. So if we take goals, what I speak about is I speak about macro and micro goals. And the basic macro goal, I say to people, whether I'm speaking to an executive team or whether I'm speaking to supervisors or people on the shop floor, the factory floor, the question I put to them is, what do you want to be famous for? What do you want to be famous for? Now, I don't mean famous like Lady Gaga or Kardashians or something like that. I mean, what do you want to be famous for with your work colleagues? What is it you want your work colleagues to say about you after you've left the room? Or if you're being introduced to the new leader in the department or the CEO, what is it you would like your person who's introducing you to say about you? And this applies particularly to the interview process. Brad, we spoke about the job search earlier. One of the core pieces of information or advice I give someone who's going for an interview or someone who's going for a sales call, you're probably not going to clinch the deal after the first interview or first sales pitch. So what I say is, what is it you want the interviewer to be saying about you after you have left? If you're doing a sales call, you ain't going to get a business first time. But what is it I want that person who may be making the final decision to say about me after I've left the room? I need to know what it is I want them to be saying about me. So if I'm going for an interview for a job, I'm going in and say, all right, the things that are important to them, the things that I've got, I want to show them I'm productive. I want to show them I'm proactive and I'm a good team player, for instance. So I encourage people to find 3 attributes, then go into the interview or into the sales call and illustrate those 3 attributes. So that when you've left the call and the interviewer is selling you up to the next level, they'll say, this person definitely is proactive. They're a good team player, etc. And they're productive, that kind of thing. So the macro goal, I say, for organizations and for each individual, and what I do, Brad, is I say to people, all right, you've got a piece of paper in front of you. Just write down what are the 3 attributes you would like to be known for or be famous for. And I say, all right, you write those down. I will now give you 5 micro goals that will help you to achieve those without knowing what you've written down. So, okay. So the next part of this then is, what are the 5 micro goals? And the 5 micro goals actually spell the acronym CHAPS, CHAPS. All right. One of the things I do believe, Brad, is that as a speaker or presenter, if you're presenting more than 2 or 3 concepts, it's really difficult for people to remember them. So I encourage people a lot of the time to find an acronym that they can hang the lessons onto. So the acronym for for the 5 micro goals that if you adopt and adapt will help you to achieve your macro goal, it spells the CHAP. So I'll ask you a question. All right. Would it be fair to say, Brad, that if someone compliments you, you feel better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's turn it around. Would it be fair to say that if you compliment someone, they're likely to feel better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the micro goal I'm going to put to you and to the listeners is the first micro goal is I will compliment one work colleague tomorrow, or I will compliment one person, neighbor, whatever it is. And the reason why I say micro goals is because we feel better when we achieve a micro goal. Right. So if tomorrow you compliment someone and you've set it as a micro goal, the dopamine kicks in, you feel slightly better because I've complimented someone. But what about the person that you've complimented? How do you think they're going to feel? Positive and upbeat as well? It's a win-win. First element of CHAPS. Second element of CHAPS is H for hear, as in hear the words thank you. My goal as a leader or as a supervisor tomorrow, when I go into work, is I'm going to hear the words thank you from a work colleague or from one of my people. Now, you may well have actually been thanked in the last few days, but it goes over our head. However, if I go in with the intention that I'm going to hear the words thank you, I've got to do something positive for that work colleague, for that associate or whatever it is. So when I do that something positive, I hear the words thank you, I realize, hey, I've achieved another CHAPS micro goal. Dopamine kicks in, I feel better. What about the person you've complimented or done something for? They're going to appreciate you more as well. So simple little micro goals like that.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And those things coming to you is thank you. And I think that it's something that needs to be put back into our community, to our languages. A lot of times now it's like, oh, thank you. Or it's like, I didn't do anything. And they kind of just shove it off and, oh, yeah, whatever. Hey, I didn't do anything, or no problem, whatever. Is to look back at that person in the eyes and say, oh, you're very welcome, or you're welcome. And we're missing that nowadays, as I've noticed that people just throw it away. And it's like, oh, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You know what I mean? And continue that energy. Just say you're welcome. And continue your conversation.
It's true. It's about appreciation as well. I mean, you're appreciating them by doing something for them. They're coming back to you and you're kind of taking it in. So it's kind of win-wins is what I try to work on with this CHAPS acronym. And I jokingly said, look, you can hear thank you anytime you want. Hear the words thank you from a car driver behind me. And you say, what? But by that, I mean, like, you let someone in front of you, they give you the wave. I mean, you don't hear it, but it actually is a thank you. And then what I say, Brad, is that the next time someone wants to be let in front of you, tell them, go away, I've already achieved my micro goal for the day.
Do you do that often?
I do the gift of GAB the idea behind the gift of GAB is to improve people performance and productivity with a smile. There is not an organization here in the United States or anywhere in the world that does not want to improve their performance and their productivity. So I can speak to manufacturing. I speak a lot to healthcare because I've had 2 bouts of cancer over the years. I can speak to education, road construction. I've done it for as well, kind of thing. So any group that wants to improve their people performance and productivity can appreciate the gift of GAB and the CHAPS acronym.
Oh, I love that. And for those of you listening, if you own a company or if you've ever an organization and you want to hear more, or actually, get Conor into your organization to do that gift of GAB, make sure you go to irishmanspeaks.com. And he's got loads of stuff on here, and it's a great website. It's got great resources. You need to check that out. However, I need to step back because Conor, you just said something that just threw me. You said that you went through 2 bouts of cancer?
Yep.
When did that happen?
When I was in Ireland, I had thyroid cancer. And then here in the States, I had prostate cancer a few years back. But again, you talk about life-changing challenges, Brian. When life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, etc. With this, what I found was it opened doors for me. I now speak a lot to oncology groups, cancer celebration, survivorship groups, etc., and healthcare in general. I try to bring a little bit of levity to these programs as well. I tell event planners when I'm chatting with them and they're saying, will we bring this guy in or not? I tell them that I've had I had the thyroid whipped out and the prostate whipped out. So having had a thyroidectomy and a prostatectomy, I now have an Irish condition known as there's not much left of me.
Well, you and the rest of my family, and unfortunately, I haven't hit that yet, but my whole family, I think we should have numerous stakes in the Synthroid drug, and you should be able to join us. I'm sure that you've either been on Synthroid or a portion of it for, for as many years as you had. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. My whole family, I don't know what it is. They've all had, most of the women in my family had this issue with the thyroid, and we should have own most of the company by now.
I think that 98.4% of people in the United States are on a version of it. But I'll tell you an interesting one. I was on Synthroid, or a brand. I think it might have been Synthroid, might be the brand. I've just taken a generic now, obviously. But when I came over here to the States, when I was in Ireland, the tablet I was on was Synthroid or a version of it. I come over here to the States, immediately the tablet is 3 times more expensive than it was in Ireland. I mean, it's nuts, Bill, some of the pricing here in the healthcare system.
Yeah, big pharma has it's got their hooks into us pretty good. I wish it wasn't so, but obviously you hear everything on the news and it's not a great thing. Why do you think we have got people that literally go over to Canada and go to the pharmacies and get stuff? Well, if one, you don't need a prescription, and well, at least not for non-narcotics, but they'll go in there, but it's cheaper. It's absolutely 100% cheaper. And it's so weird that, out here, it's like we maintain 80% of the big pharma's profits so they can continue to sell it to Europe and Canada at a quarter of the price.
Yep.
But hopefully one of these days our government or somebody will be able to, take care of. But, right now, as long as it's available, and insurance companies are at least taking care of a part of it, there's not really a lot that we can do. And the demand stays high. Why does the demand stay high? Because we're paying for it and we continue to pay for it until it gets to the point where we're not paying for it anymore. And there's more competition in the marketplace. Big pharma is going to win every time.
Yeah. And I mean, the lobbying levels that big pharma are able to push into effect in Washington, etc. It's so difficult for this to ever change, I think.
So yeah, I am really, really excited I want to learn more. I want to see you more. We need to dig into some of your videos. And I definitely tell everybody out there, he's got a ton of videos on his site, and you have a YouTube site, correct?
I have a YouTube site, which is Irishman Speaks, all one word. If they just key in Irishman Speaks, Conor Cunneen, it'll take as well, where I put a lot of my material. And virtually everything we've spoken about here appears in some kind of format or some little clip from a keynote that I would have done on my YouTube channel.
Excellent. So I'm going to make sure that all of the links to social media, to YouTube, to his site, irishmanspeaks.com, again, irishmanspeaks.com, and make sure that you've got all that. He's got videos. He's got a blog on there. There's some information on keynotes and workshops and stuff coming up. You can get his meeting planner and get on his schedule and get him out to either your organization or your business. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you always know when another episode is dropping. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or some other podcast directory, really appreciate it if you give us a review. And I don't even care if it's a bad review, because any information that I get, any kind of feedback, it just helps me evolve the podcast that much further. Had a great time on this. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
It's been a pleasure, Brad. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Just in case you're feeling homesick.
It's sunny and 82 outside right now, so I really feel bad for you. But for Conor and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cheers.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Life-Changing Challengers. I'm your host, Brad Minus, saying thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. If today's stories inspired you, please take a moment to review, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create an even bigger impact. Remember, every challenge is a chance to grow. Until next time, keep pushing, keep challenging, and never stop pursuing your extraordinary.